My name is Jennifer DeMarco, and we're entering the final section, the final stretch of the Forge It web series workshop. This is class number 13, and it begins our 4-class section entitled The Tools. This is when we make some of our hard decisions. What equipment are you going to bring to the table? What equipment are you going to use to create your incredible project? Now, as you see, we've got a lot of equipment on display today, and we're going to jump right in, as always. I think that's my favorite phrase right now. And we're going to talk immediately about cameras. Now, technology is always changing, so you may very well have far more options today if you're coming to this series in 2013 or 2014. You may have other choices, but these are the basic choices, and we do push a little bit into the future here, dealing with 3D and taking advantage of some new emerging technologies. The most important thing that you understand is that the bare minimum that you need is you need to be shooting in HD. Now, what that translates to is a 1920 by 1080, that's the pixel resolution. And you want to have at least 30 frames per second, and it would be great if your native ratio was a 16:9 ratio. Now, you can write that down on an index card and bring it in anywhere that you go to buy a camera, or when you're shopping online, make sure that those specifics are listed for the camera you're interested in. If a camera meets those specifications, it doesn't really matter what the brand is. Yes, I know we've talked about generic versus brand, but really, those are the specs that must be met. And if you meet those specs, go for it. I have no preference to brand. As a matter of fact, until starting to film, I was a tried and true, dyed-in-the-wool Canon brand fan. But the camera that I wound up buying was Nikon. So it really doesn't make that much of a difference in the grand scheme of things. So speaking of the Nikon, one option is the Nikon D5100, the D5100, with a 55-200 lens. That is the basic model that I use, and actually people always say, well, can you put a different lens on? Can you get you some extreme close-ups for us and things like this when I'm working as a camera person? And stunningly, I've been able to get everything anyone has wanted me to get with that 55-200 lens and that base model. That'll run about $800, again, as of August 2012. If you want to go a little bit more extreme, if you're planning on doing a lot of action work, maybe underwater work or work where you mount the camera on a bike or on a climber's shoulder or helmet cam, something like that, the HD Hero 2 is an excellent model. It's very small. Now, it doesn't currently have a zoom lens or zoom capability, but it is an excellent point and shoot. Remember, you can always do zooms in post-production. And if you purchase 2 of them, they have a special mount where the 2 are mounted together. They're $300 each. And you shoot simultaneously to capture true 3D. That is probably the only camera currently on the market that allows you as an independent filmmaker to shoot in 3D, which is incredible. And it's red-blue 3D, so that means it can be seen with your standard red-blue glasses, nothing special. That's a beautiful little model, and their whole, the Hero company, their whole push is they have a mount for everything. You can mount their little camera on a car, on a bike, on a diving tank, whatever it is, they've got the mount available for you. Another interesting backup option, I'm not sure if I recommend this as your primary, but it is one option, especially if you already have one, is an iPad. Now, let me clarify. I am talking about the iPad 3 that shoots in true HD and it has the Retina display. This is going to give you something as true and as close as possible to shooting with a full HD camera such as the Nikon or the Hero. An iPad 3, though it does shoot in a 4:3 ratio, your footage can easily be converted to a 16:9 in basic software that is available for the iPad. And what you would want to do is you would simply probably want to run fabric or tape that won't hurt your screen across the top and bottom of your screen, creating a 16:9 ratio on your screen. Because the iPad has a 4:3 natural ratio, you don't want to think that you have something in the frame that isn't, or you're going to wind up cutting off the top of someone's head or their eyes like I did on one of my classes. An iPad 3 with basic components, not a super large memory, but enough to get you through a day of shooting until you can get home and download it onto your computer, and a case to protect it, which I highly recommend. You probably do want a full wrap case, not just a little smart cover. Will probably set you back about $600. Now, what I really love about these three options is, these aren't outrageous, and none of these actually look like what you might think is the stereotypical look of a film camera, the huge shoulder-mounted unit. The Nikon looks like a good quality, a high-quality photography camera. The Hero looks practically like an Instamatic. It's a small, boxy little unit. The iPad, well, as we all know, the iPad looks kind of like a trade paperback or a magazine. It can fit easily in a messenger bag and you can carry it around. You don't want to make a scene when you're out filming. Even with your permits, you don't want to hold up traffic or even foot traffic. You don't want people to be stopping and interrupting shots. And even though that can be fun and exciting, oh, look at this, I'm recognized as an independent filmmaker, it can also really eat into your day, and your actors are going to get real frustrated if you go long. So the camera is definitely the first choice that you want to make. And there is no right or wrong here. Again, if you just got the iPad 3 and you're like, wow, that set me back, I'm not sure if I can add in all this other stuff, stick with the iPad 3 for the time being. You know what? There's a marketing angle right there to say that you shot your entire feature on your iPad. Apple loves the publicity, and there was a lot of Apple fans out there. So those are your camera choices. Now again, anything that meets these specifications, go for it. But these are your base models with set prices as of the date of this recording, August 2012. You could go with any of those and be happy. Okay, let's jump right in to our next section of the tools. Okay, our next section are the basic tools. So you've chosen your camera, and I'm just going to assume that you've chosen one of the three that was on the board or something so much like them that these things will be applicable, because that's pretty much the categories you're going to be dealing with. The number one thing you're going to want to pick up is a clipboard. It could be any clipboard. It could be colorful and polka dotted, mine is, or it can be a standard brown and silver clipboard. This clipboard is for your script as the director. This is to differentiate your script, which will have specific notes on it about shots and actors' notes and things like that, as opposed to the many scripts that will be floating around the set that are for individual actors highlighted with their lines or for the prop manager. The clipboard is for your script, that's it. You should carry it. I've seen people use a carabiner to attach their script to their belt loop. That's perfectly fine, or have it in a messenger bag or a side pouch. Your lights. Remember we brought up lights before. This is the standard tree lamp model that I was talking about. This is $20 at a superstore. Incredibly inexpensive. What's most important? Most important thing is this takes standard bulbs, 60 watt. Now, the type that you're going to want to get are Reveal. If you pick up a box of Reveal bulbs and you flip it over, they really do beautifully illustrate why you must use only Reveal bulbs. This is what a standard bulb looks like, yellow. This is what a Reveal bulb looks like, white. You get true colors. You want true colors. Remember the other lighting I talked about? The floor lamp? This is it, hardware store. Relatively inexpensive, doesn't have a very long cord, so you know you're going to need an extension cord to go with it. This one takes 100 watt. Again, I use a Reveal. Oh, I'm sorry, this actually takes 120. But either way, I use a Reveal bulb and we're good to go. This whole thing was originally yellow. I spray painted the inside, taped over the socket, spray painted the inside white. Again, just like with the tree, white inside helps you preserve that white, clear, pure light. You want true light, true colors always. Slate. With your slate, you have two choices. If you're using a camera other than an iPad, there are actually slate programs. There's actually about 7 slate programs available on the iPad as apps. Those work great. But if you are using the iPad, or if you simply don't have an iPad, or if you're nervous about using the iPad as your slate, a standard slate can be picked up. Well, I found them primarily online because they do tend to be a specialty item. I've also had people make their slates, which is perfectly fine. I've seen them as chalkboards where you simply take a piece of wood, slice it, put a hinge so you have your snapper. painted over with chalkboard paint, you can write right on it. However, I found this slate was the best type to use. Why? It's a whiteboard. It cleanly and clearly washes off. I use red, so it's very obvious. Sometimes I don't even bother to fill in most of the information. I do always put my shooting date, my scene number, which you guys will remember from your web series script. You always have a scene number. Most slates say take and roll. Well, I usually have the roll mean the shot in the script, and the take is literally if I have to keep retaking. If I have scene 1, shot 2, and I have to do it 4 times, it would be take 1, take 2, take 3, take 4. So because most web series use shots and break down the scripts by shot, I almost always substitute roll for where I put my shot number. Now, why would you use a slate? I think we've touched on this before, but let me just make sure. This is to tell you, after you have all of your footage together, what you're actually looking at. Wonderful, wonderful things is if you're working with a Windows computer and you have Windows 7, each of your little pieces of footage, each of your little pieces of film, each shot will show a thumbnail. And if you hold on the slate for a full 15 seconds, that thumbnail should be the picture of your slate. That way you know you can sort your footage, you can go through it quickly, and if you as the director make notes on your clipboarded script that the take that you want was take 3, then it's very easy to sort your footage for editing because you're going to have an enormous amount of footage. How much? We'll get to that in a second. Boom, mic, and pole. Now this is my wonderful little cheat that I've talked to you guys about. This is the boom mic. As you can see, it's quite long, very different from a top mount mic that simply sits on the top of your camera and is about this long. This really gets in by the actors very close. This pole is not a boom mic pole. This is a unipod, a monopod. I've seen it called both actually. This is what you want. It's very simple, very straightforward. It works great, and it is literally a fraction of the price, less than a fourth of the price from a standard boom mic pole. The only difference being, of course, it doesn't thread the wire through the center for you. You actually have to tape it down with electrical tape, duct tape, scotch tape, stickers, whatever you want to do. You do want it to be steady though, so that that wire doesn't fall into your frame. Okay, so with your boom mic and pole, let's move on to tripods. You might say tripods, plural. We only talked about one. I need a tripod, 6 to 8 foot in height. It needs a pan and tilt head. I got it, Jennifer. But you know what another one is to have? A mini tripod. They also sometimes call them tabletop or desktop tripods. This is a 42-inch, so it actually goes pretty darn high, but it would be great for mounting in the middle of a table. But I can't really lie here because you guys can see very clearly this mini tripod is still in its package. I have never used it. I have heard that it can come in handy when you're trying to get right into the middle of some kind of action, but I personally find that a good pair of bicycle knee pads to save my knees can get me right down in the middle of any action, whether it's gravel, mud, a tree branch, whatever it is. I prefer as a camera operator to get in with the action as opposed to setting up a tripod. But sometimes that's going to be your best option. And these guys won't set you back too much. Do make sure, however, that you bring your camera with you because you want to make sure that it can balance your camera appropriately. Especially if you have, you're working with a Nikon or a camera like that with a large, heavy lens. A good photography equipment store will allow you to try one out, take it out of the package, you can talk to them, mount your camera on it, just to make sure that you have the best possible fit. A steady grip with wrist strap. Now, this I am primarily talking about a camera like a Canon or a Nikon that looks like a photography camera, a high-quality photography camera. They do not come standard with a strap that attaches to the camera across the back of your hand and straps very snugly to your wrist. However, unless you are going to use a tripod for every single shot, which is perfectly fine, if you are using one of those larger photography type cameras, you must have a steady grip. That's usually what they're called, a wrist strap that attaches. That camera can bounce out of your hands surprisingly easily. You want it to be steady. That does help keep it steady. It doesn't shake nearly as much as when you're holding it. Cameras get heavy quickly. Fatigue is a major issue. Now, if you don't want to be holding your camera the whole day, there are options. Of course, as I said, many series shoot primarily on a tripod, but another option is to create a kind of mount. We have several students, actually, I recently found out, who are in wheelchairs. And the option, or the question came to me, well, you know, I do get easily fatigued. And how can I best mount my camera so that I'm not holding it? Because I don't want to work on a tripod. I want to be able to move it around. And I thought on this, and then finally I did answer one of the students who had particularly posed this question. And I said, you know, across the arms of the chair, you could build a box setting that you could put the camera down on. As a matter of fact, you could even take a tripod and slice it, use that pan and tilt head, and mount it into that box so that you have a pan and tilt head on this box setting across the arms of the wheelchair. And I'm very curious to see, the student was excited about the idea, but I'm very curious to see if he does it and how it works. So you have a lot of options. Think outside the box. And if you're going to be doing a lot of those tracking shots that we talked about, where a wheelchair is going to be part of your equipment, again, that's not on here, but I do recommend it. It's great for tracking shots, and tracking shots are dynamic. Then that kind of box setting would be a great idea. Another option, of course, would be if you can find the smallest possible tripod you could find with a pan and tilt head. Then you wouldn't have to do any major retrofitting. You could just literally strap that tripod to that box setting. All right, let's move on. With either the Hero or a photography type like a Nikon camera, you are going to need SD cards. This is the media that these units film onto. They record onto SD cards. Now, many of them take SD cards higher than 16 gigabytes, but I find a 16 gigabyte card is perfect. Now, you might say 16 gigabytes, yikes, that's a lot. 16 gigabytes will hold about 3 hours worth of footage shot in HD. You say 3 hours, my web series is going to be 10 minutes an episode or 30 minutes an episode. I, on average, have 4 hours of footage for a 30-minute episode. So that's an SD card plus a little more. Now you might say, well, I need one, right? Because I just shoot and take it off. Well, no, again, a long day, you're going to fill more than one SD card. But also, you want to keep your footage. And this is, again, where one of those hidden costs come in. You want to keep your footage, because what if you want to re-edit the episode? What if you want to do a blooper reel? What if, even if someone miraculously said, Jennifer, we're going to pay your salary and pay all your bills. Here's $1,500. We want you to completely redo episode 1. You don't have to reshoot episode 1 of Epic Heroes, but we want you to redub the whole thing. Well, I'd be certainly glad that I still have all my footage and I would be able to redub everything. So I think right now I have, and I do have them in this little case because, again, I've been out in weather before. This is a case specifically made for SD cards. It holds, I believe, 12, and I think I own 8. And what I do is I keep my footage on these SD cards. It's the way I archive my footage. Now, I also have a tetrabyte drive, which is, I believe, is it 1,000 gigabytes per tetrabyte or 500 gigabytes per tetrabyte? But it's a very large tetrabyte drive that I can empty the cards onto the tetrabyte drive. But that was several $100s. One way to do it is to literally keep your footage on these little SD cards, archive them then in a safety deposit box or a fireproof box in your home. That way they're stored, they take up very little space. In case folks don't know, an SD card is literally tiny. So, I would say 4 to begin with, and test them. Unfortunately, we did have a situation where we bought in bulk 4 of them, and of those 4, one of them was wrong, and it didn't tell us that it was corrupted until after we'd shot an entire day's worth of footage, and we went to pull the footage off the card. It showed the footage was there, but it would not let us access it, watch it. It showed the thumbnails, remove it off. The card was corrupted. All right, so keep that in mind. Test all of your cards. The other item here is batteries. Again, battery life is going to depend on the camera that you use. Now, with an iPad, it's an internal battery, so you're going to want to be very aware of what the battery life is on your iPad. With a Nikon photography type camera or a Hero, you're simply going to have to try it. Have it on all day shooting a family picnic or just incidental footage at a park and see how long that camera takes. My batteries on average run for about an hour and a half on the Nikon D5100. I have 4, and in an average shooting day, I will go through all of them. One of the things, I have 2 chargers right now, and one of the things I'm saving up for is adding additional chargers because I want to be able to charge faster and better. I have found that a brand name, if you match the brand name of your camera, a brand name battery charger does charge faster, but it doesn't charge any better. Again, as you can see, this was a pill case that I got at a convenience store. I keep my batteries in this. That way, if they're rained on, they won't die. I did kill 1 battery when it was exposed to rain. That's how delicate some of this equipment is. So above and beyond this, again, the only thing not on here is that wheelchair. I do think that that's a great idea. Tracking shots, again, they're excellent, excellent ways to show action and movement. The reveal bulbs are not specifically on here, but you're definitely going to want to have a nice backstock of those. 1 or 2 25-foot extension cords, excellent choice. And of course, all that food and drink for your actors and crew. All right, let's go on to the next section. All right, for our last section of Class 13, covering the tools, we're going to talk about your post-production tools. Now, this is specifically about where you can go to get what you need and how you can create the effects that you're going to want using the tools that we've already covered. Your stock music. Now, we touched on that a little bit yesterday. Videoblocks.com, freesound.org, those are fine. But let me just throw one other thing out there, and this is brand new to me, so it's going to be brand new to you, I'm hoping too. On the iPad, and this is now any iPad, there are apps that make music. Now, I'm not talking about some of the more serious apps such as Music Studio, where you really do, at least in my opinion, need to be a musician to make quality music with those apps. I'm talking about apps that are instruments, where literally touching the screen in patterns harmonizes the notes for you. There are some amazing, amazing apps out there and programs, and the search string that I used was simply instruments, music. All of the apps that I found that made quality music effects, and I mean music effects that you could easily score your own web series episode with, every single one of them was either free or 99 cents. I was especially impressed with a harp app. Now, as a harpist myself, this harp app sounds like a real harp, and that's not with any extra speaker, and it was free. So I wouldn't say to pass that up. You don't have to be musically inclined. These apps do a lot of the work for you, and yet it's your original composition. How'd you like to be the writer and composer of your own web series, having never picked up an instrument before, other than an iPad? All right, let's move right on. So with your stock music, you guys know where to get that now. I can't imagine you not being able to find what you need at videoblocks.com and freesound.org. Stock footage. Okay, now you can get stock footage, which includes effects like rain and fire and things like that, but also stock footage of a pan of Stonehenge, because goodness knows your characters are probably going to wind up there. With stock footage, you can get it at VideoBlocks, but sometimes I've run into issues where I need something very, very specific. And sadly, VideoBlocks, even though they have hundreds of thousands of pieces of footage, they didn't have what I needed. I did find what I need, however, at gettyimages.com. They have a section there, a tab, they have images, they sell stills, called footage. And I believe the prices range from $20 to $50. Now, you might say, oh, well, that's great for footage I can then use free and clear. Well, mind you, we're talking about $20 to $50 for a 4-second piece of footage. So make sure you really want it, and you can't get it anywhere else. And I don't mean anywhere else online. I mean anywhere else in the real world. Now let's move right on to software. I know a lot of students have been waiting for this. This is the big question. What software do you use? What software do you use? You know, you have a lot of choices. And stunningly, there is no right or wrong answer here. So PowerDirector 10 has just recently been released, again, as of August 2012. It runs about $80, a little bit less if you can catch it on sale. Now, the deal with PowerDirector 10 is that you don't need a Macintosh computer to run it. Now, back in the day, if you wanted to do any kind of film editing, you had to have a Mac. That's not the case anymore. PowerDirector is an excellent piece of software. Now, people say, oh, it's glitchy, oh, it does weird things. Yes, all software sometimes crashes. All software sometimes has problems. But PowerDirector 10 has taken the PowerDirector series a step further by allowing people to now do green screen work. Now what that means is you put your actor in front of a solid color screen, you have them do actions, and then in PowerDirector you punch out that background and you can put in any background you want. That is a massive step forward. They've also improved their particle effects, which is a huge step. I know if you're going to have special effects in your series and you want some kind of magic effects, you're going to like PowerDirector 10 much more. There is a free trial for PowerDirector 10, so go ahead, download it, see for yourself. Adobe After Effects, PowerDirector 10, like I said, 80 bucks. Adobe After Effects, about $1,000. Now, Adobe After Effects, I would say, is the professional standard, or very close to the prosumer standard for film editing. However, though I use Photoshop almost every day, Adobe After Effects is way too much program for what I'm doing. As a matter of fact, I'm not quite sure what it offers above and beyond. It just offers more of. It offers above and beyond what PowerDirector offers. It has a more complex interface. It may help you do things faster. It has more templates to download, but I simply don't see the use for it. I like to tell my stories and not create my stories in post-production. I want the post-production to create the magic. I don't want it to create the meat of the story. So if your series is going to rely very, very heavily on special effects, then yes, you are going to want to invest in Adobe After Effects. Moving right along, remember we talked about using the iPad 3 as a camera. It is possible. What kind of software are you going to need for that? Oh, about 10 bucks worth of software. You're going to need iMovie and iMovie Extras. That will handle the conversion that we talked about from the smaller ratio to the HD ratio. And it will also allow you to film, edit, add credits, cool things like that. Now, if we're not talking about being on the iPad, because the iPad, of course, functions as your laptop for post-production work and your camera, and if we are talking about using PowerDirector 10 and Adobe After Effects, you're going to need a laptop. And you can say, well, of course, I've got a laptop. No. You need to go now and you need to look up both of these programs, and you need to see what their basic minimum specs are, and then you need to up it from there. PowerDirector in particular, even though I'm sure Adobe draws on RAM very strongly as well, all of their programs do. PowerDirector in particular needs you to have more than the minimum of RAM for it to run smoothly and with as few glitches and crashes as possible. Now, we recently added a post-production machine to our tools. It ran about $900. I think the base machine was about $850, and then we upped the RAM. Now, you can install additional RAM yourself. You can go to memoryforless.com, look up your model, it snaps in, it snaps out. Or take it into your local computer store. They'll do it for you for very little money. A good laptop doesn't have to cost you thousands and thousands of dollars. Again, about $900, $1,000, somewhere around there. You'll be able to do everything you want. Let me just give you this one tip, this one word of advice. With your laptop, use it for filming. Use it for editing. Don't put all your music and your movies and your entertainment on this particular computer. Have this computer be primarily to run your video editing software, because it's going to draw on every resource you have, especially if you're going to be uploading to YouTube or another video sharing service. You're going to want to be working in the program, producing in the program, uploading at the same time. You can certainly do that with a $900 laptop, but not if you've got all your entertainment and other files on the same machine. You don't want to tax your resources. So this concludes class 13, and we've talked about all the tools. We've talked about our cameras, we've talked about our equipment, and we've talked about our post-production. Again, there's no right or wrong. It's about what feels comfortable for you and what kind of series you want to create. Go, do some research now, look at your minimum requirements, figure out what kind of computer you need, because you know what? You're now ready to start writing out your budget, and your budget is an important first step in creating a quality web series with no nasty surprises.